Okay, here we go. Good afternoon, everyone. I just spilled my cousin's water on me. That's great. I'm Lynn. James Ferris Thaxter. Ferris, like the Ferris wheel. It's actually a relative of ours on our grandpa's side. A lot of you here know him as Jim or Judge or Justice Thaxter, but for many of us, he's only ever been Uncle Jim or Uncle Jimmy. Uncle Jimmy was the third child of Genevieve and Clinton Thaxter Sr. I'm literally dropping water here. He had an older sister, our Aunt Barbara, an older brother, my dad, Clinton Jr., and a younger brother, our Uncle Tommy. Uncle Jimmy is the last to leave us, so with his passing, we say goodbye not only to him, but the whole family. The Thaxter family was very close and loyal and devoted to each other. They were also very loud and very competitive. We love the stories Dad used to tell us about when he was growing up, especially about sitting around the dinner table. Dad said there was always a lot of laughter and teasing and competing for attention, with everyone talking on top of each other. We always liked the story about the time a 7 or 8-year-old Uncle Jimmy came to dinner after apparently learning a new word that day and proudly told the family, "I am really fatigued today." The family genuinely enjoyed being together long after the kids left home and started their own families. Everyone stayed in Fresno, and we spent a lot of time together as an extended family. As a young kid, I remember listening to the grown-ups laughing and talking all over each other while they competed for center stage. When Paul called me the night Uncle Jimmy left us, my first thought was that they were finally all together again, and I imagined them sitting around the dinner table catching up, still loud and still talking on top of each other. I felt comfort in that image. Uncle Jimmy was more reserved than his sister and brothers. He was never the loudest voice in the room or the one seeking attention. I always felt that he listened more than he spoke. But he could hold his own, and he was always right there in the middle of it. He was funny with a subtle sense of humor, and he had a great laugh. He just didn't need to be the center of attention to be an important part of the conversation. And I do have it on good authority from our mom, who was just a year behind Uncle Jimmy at Fresno High, that he was a bit of a rascal in high school. I was lucky enough to work with Uncle Jimmy after he retired from the Court of Appeal and joined the firm where I was working. He helped me with a lot of appeals, but we never put his name on any of the briefs. I loved discussing cases with him and hearing his perspective. He listened carefully, asked exactly the right questions, and made sure we never overlooked any of the details. I used to joke with him that he was my associate. And I thought he showed a lot of promise, too. The truth is, I was always a little bit awed by his intellect and experience, yet he never made me feel like anything other than his equal. He treated everyone at the firm that way, lawyers and staff alike, with the same respect, kindness, and genuine interest. I once heard a retired judge say, "When you put the black robe on, it's hard to take it off." I don't think it was like that for Uncle Jimmy at all. He wore the robe with dignity and distinction, but he never let it define him. He remained the same, unpretentious, down-to-earth person he had always been. I have to be honest, though. He was really not very good at Family Feud. Thaxters loved playing games when we were together. Charades, Pictionary, Family Feud. One time we were playing Family Feud, and I can't remember the exact question, but it was something like, "Name a fruit that grows on a tree." And in a moment that instantly became family legend, Uncle Jimmy's hand shot up and he said, "Cantaloupe." Uncle Jimmy was detail-oriented and found real joy in research and organization. He had a lifelong passion for sports. He developed his own horse racing handicapping formula. As a young boy, he kept track of an entire Major League Baseball season, statistics for every team and every player. And when he got to Fresno High, he kept scores and stats for all the varsity teams. He worked hard at everything he did and never gave up. He ran a marathon years before running marathons was a thing, and he trained for it by running laps around the old downtown YMCA indoor track. And it took 30 laps to make a mile. He told Dad after the race that about halfway through, he felt like his feet were literally on fire. He could not stand it, and he came across a puddle or something like that, and he ripped his shoes and socks off, and he stood in it, and he said it was like steam rising from it. But he finished the race. I want to close with a story that means a lot to me, because it captures Uncle Jimmy in such a human and personal way. When I was about 7 years old, I went fishing with Dad and Uncle Jimmy. We'd just gotten settled into our little boat, and I drew my rod back for my first cast, and when I tried to swing it forward, it stopped dead. And at that exact instant, Uncle Jimmy screamed and said some words that were new to me. I turned around and I saw my fishing lure stuck right in the middle of his forehead. And Dad tried to remove it, but the hook was really deep and he couldn't get it out. But we'd only just arrived at the river and nobody, even Uncle Jimmy, wanted to leave. So Dad cut off the lure and left the hook sticking out of his forehead, and we fished until dark. We even stopped at Lesterburger on the way home for dinner. I have a very clear memory of Uncle Jimmy at the window ordering his food with a hook sticking out of his forehead. When he got home, he drove himself to the ER and got the hook removed and stitched up. Many years later, I shared that story at a firm retreat. Everyone laughed, especially Uncle Jimmy. Afterward, he pulled me aside and he showed me the scar. He said he wasn't sure whether I remembered what had happened. Trust me, I remembered. And then he told me something that has stayed with me. He said he'd always felt terrible for yelling at me that day. I was just a little girl and he knew I hadn't done it on purpose. That confession and his quiet desire to make amends, even decades later, perfectly captured who he was. It spoke to his thoughtfulness, his capacity for reflection, and the deep care he had for the people he loved. Our family is forever blessed by James Ferris Thaxter. He showed us that strength can be gentle, that success can be humble, and that the simplest kindness can be the most profound. Rest easy, Uncle Jimmy. We love you, and we will miss you.
Well, I had a cup of water till my cousin Lim spilled it. So I'm deeply honored that my cousin Paul asked me to speak about my beloved Uncle Jim, a man whose influence on our family was steady, profound, and quietly powerful. And for those who don't know me, I'm Juliana Thaxter Anastasados. I'm the youngest of the Thaxter cousins and the youngest daughter of the youngest Thaxter sibling. And so my dad, Uncle, who you all know as Uncle Tommy, was Uncle Jim's only younger brother. My father, Tommy, passed away when he was 60, 30 years ago. And one of the clearest memories that I have, and my siblings and I both all share, of my Uncle Jim comes from those final months of my dad's life. At a time when Uncle Jim was serving as a busy appellate judge, he would come by my father's bedside several times a week to read to him. He didn't read loudly or theatrically. He read with that deep, calm, resonant voice of his, full of love for his younger brother. My dad would lie there smiling, soaking in the words and the devotion, and that simple act captured so much of who Uncle Jim was: gentle, thoughtful, and unwaveringly present, a man defined by quiet strength. Some of what I'm going to share is similar to what Lynn shared. I didn't know I was going to repeat some of what you say, but I guess we have similar experiences. So I'll leave the professional accomplishments to others to discuss. We all know the brilliance and the fairness that Uncle Jim brought to the law, but to me, he was more than judge. He was more than Your Honor. He was the person who encouraged me toward my own legal career. When I was considering law school, he invited me to spend an afternoon in his courtroom, and over lunch afterward, he talked honestly about the profession, about its joys, its challenges, and then he told me why he believed I was well suited for it. And I remember being struck that even though we hadn't spent a lot of time together when I was young, he had been watching. He knew me. And this was his way: to observe, to notice, to understand. Later, when I graduated from UC Davis Law School, he drove up for the day to celebrate with my parents and me, and it meant the world to me. Years later, when I was working as an appellate lawyer in Tennessee, and I was wrestling with a difficult case, I thought to call him for advice. And not only did he agree to help me, he dove in. He treated my work as if it were his own. I remember him referring to our arguments and suggesting ways that we might make them better. His guidance was invaluable, but even more meaningful was how he made me feel capable, like I belonged in the profession that he loved, and how he treated me like a colleague, like a collaborator, even though I had nowhere near his experience or expertise. And that generosity of spirit and earnest humility was pure Uncle Jim. My siblings, Stephen and Susan, have their own memories that reveal some of the similar qualities, albeit in different contexts. My brother Stephen remembers when Uncle Jim stepped up to serve as his first ever soccer coach at the Daily Demons. Uncle Jim had never played soccer. He had no children on the team. He was already a busy attorney, but he read coaching handbooks and learned how to play soccer. He organized the practices, and he led those kids to become a competitive force in the very first Fresno Unified soccer team. Again, that was Uncle Jim. It was something mattered to someone he loved. He showed up fully. My sister Susan has a special memory of Uncle Jim's influence and presence when she was working as a detective in Tracy, California. When she was heartbroken over a rape case that she had worked on that had ended in an acquittal, she reached out to Uncle Jim in hopes of getting some clarity on how she might have maybe prepared the evidence better. Uncle Jim didn't offer platitudes. He read every detail of the materials she shared with him. He evaluated it all. He talked it through with her, giving her the kind of clear, compassionate, intellectually honest feedback and encouragement that made him such a good judge and such a good uncle. He was her sounding board when she needed both clarity and assurance in her abilities. And as Lynn shared, Uncle Jim had the same sharp wit and intelligent humor as our dad and their older brother, Uncle Clinton, but he expressed it so differently. My dad and Uncle Clinton were the big personalities, the boisterous storytellers. My memory of Uncle Jim, when we would have our loud Thaxter family gatherings, was often of him just listening to his brothers with his trademark smile, laughing at their antics. But make no mistake, Uncle Jim was funny in a quieter, more understated way, the kind of humor you had to lean into to catch, the kind that made you feel like you were in on something special. As he grew older, even as illness slowly took his voice, his devotion never faded. I'll never forget at Uncle Clinton's memorial service a few years ago. Uncle Jim could barely speak, but he held my hand and he listened intently as I caught him up on my life. And having lost my own father so young, I can't express how much it meant that Uncle Jim and also Uncle Clinton filled that fatherly space with such love and devotion. And I'm certain that my dad looked down with gratitude as his big brothers were taking care of his little girl. So when we talk about losing Uncle Jim, for me, it isn't just the loss of an uncle. It's the loss of a devoted presence, fatherly, steady, mentoring, and kind. I'm forever grateful for the example that he set, for the way he showed love through patience, generosity, and quiet constancy. His legacy lives in the people he shaped, in the way we try to show up for others, in the way we try to be thoughtful, fair, and quietly strong. He may not have been the loudest voice in the room, but he didn't need to be to make such a lasting impact. Thank you, Uncle Jimmy. I love you, and you will be missed.
Morgan, and Jim was my grandpa, so I'm going to be calling him Grandpa Jim, not Uncle Jim today. It's so nice to hear everybody's stories of Jim. He was, like everybody has said, understated, very humble, and you'll see a lot of the same themes in what I have to say about him and my experience of him. Some of my earliest memories are of Grandpa Jim showing up for my sister and I's anything. Soccer games, cross-country meets, any sort of academic achievement, whatever. He was always there. He was always wearing his little straw Fresno State hat, and you could spot him a mile away. Even on the days that, our soccer game would be rained out, and if somebody forgot to call him, he would be there in the rain waiting for us. So he was just always so devoted, and just it was so important to him to show up. And I really think that almost everyone's experience is the same. That's kind of just how he was. He just always made sure that the people in his life were taken care of, and I admire him so much for that. I really was struck by the way that, especially as he and my grandma's health started to fade, the way that he took care of her and always made sure that she had everything that she ever needed. Even in their last days together, when they passed just a couple of weeks apart from each other, his last task, I truly feel, was to make sure that she was going to be okay and she was at peace, and once she was taken care of, then he could finally relax. And I'm just always going to remember that about him. Something really impressive that he did that a lot of people have actually mentioned already today is that right after he retired, he started volunteering at Valley Children's Hospital. And he was in the playroom playing games with kids who were staying for a long time, or even just at the bedside reading books. And I always thought that was so cool, because I was about the same age as the kids that he was taking care of, that he didn't just have the time to come play games with us, but he was playing Othello at Valley Children's with, kids whose families might not be able to be there all the time. And now, as a nurse, being at Valley Children's, it has taken on a completely different meaning for me, to be able to see, those kids who are going through a really hard and vulnerable time, to see my volunteers there, just being able to be a presence and just enrich their lives in that sort of different way. It makes me emotional every time still, because every time I see a volunteer at the bedside now, I see Grandpa Jim. So that is always how I'll remember him. So thank you.
Good afternoon. And Paul, thank you so much for inviting me to make a few comments. We're actually here to celebrate Jim's life. And what a remarkable life it's been, even from the beginning. Jim and his sister and his brothers were raised and guided by remarkable parents. And all four children became highly respected, personally and professionally. Clint is a stockbroker, Barbara as a school teacher, Jim as an attorney and a jurist, and Tom as an orthopedic surgeon. It really doesn't get better than that. So Jim and Carol married in 1956 after he graduated from Fresno State, and a couple months before he entered UC Hastings College of the Law. They were blessed with their daughter Linda's birth after the first year. And I can attest to this, that with that motivation, Jim focused on his studies, graduated with highest honors, while Carol was the primary breadwinner during that law school experience. Jim passed the bar, joined Chet and Dick Andrews in their Fresno law firm in 1961, and their son Paul arrived shortly thereafter. I had the good fortune to practice law with Jim and others in the Andrews firm for 13 years, from 1969 through 1982. But I must admit, however, that the path for me to get there was a little bit rocky. After serving as a Fresno County Deputy District Attorney for 2 years, I decided to interview a couple of law firms in Fresno that specialized in civil law. And the firm of Andrews was one that I wanted to consider. The firm at that time was Andrews, Thaxter, Jones, and Jones. And that was at the top of my list. But shortly before the interview, I attended a Fresno County bar event that Jim happened to be at. And wanting to make a good impression, I struck up a pleasant conversation as he followed me through the buffet food line. Distracted by my efforts to make a smash hit, I overloaded my flimsy paper plate. It collapsed, and the beans plopped right onto Jim's shoes. Talk about making a good impression. I was embarrassed and dismayed, and I assumed that I had just blown any chance to be invited to join this firm. It turned out that Jim was very forgiving. He laughed it off, and I was overjoyed when I received and accepted the offer to join the firm. Perhaps the rhyme in the firm's anticipated next name, which would become Andrews, Thaxter, Jones, and Baxter, had something to do with it. Jim was a lawyer's lawyer, and he gained universal respect within the bench and the bar. He earned an outstanding reputation handling both transactional and litigation matters, and was highly respected for leadership positions within the profession and within the community. He was largely responsible for initiating Fresno County Legal Services, designed to provide voluntary legal services for the needy. And he was a later elected president of the Fresno County Bar Association in 1976, which was the only time that the state bar and the California Judges Association had their conventions in Fresno. He also served as president of the YMCA and volunteered his service to a number of community organizations. Jim was a mentor for me during my 13 years with the firm, and I swear I must have worn out the carpet to his office, seeking advice and counsel on a number of professional and personal issues. I made the difficult decision to leave the firm in 1983 to become Governor Deukmejian's appointment secretary, a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to assist the governor in the appointment of the judicial and executive branches of state government. Recognizing that Jim had all the personal and professional attributes to be an excellent judge, I was very curious and disappointed, frankly, that he hadn't promptly submitted an application. So I took the initiative, very unusual, to phone him at the time. I found out that he hadn't applied only because he didn't want to put me on the spot. Once I assured Jim that I wouldn't feel that way and that the governor makes the final decision, he finally submitted an application. He passed all the evaluations with flying colors and was appointed to the Fresno County Superior Court by Governor Dickmajian in 1987 and was later elevated to the 5th District Court of Appeal in 1990 by Governor Wilson. He capped off his extraordinary career by serving with distinction as an arbitrator and mediator with the Dowling-Aaron firm. But most importantly, Jim was a devoted husband to Carol, in sickness and in health, and who was his companion and wife for nearly 70 years. A wonderful and supportive father to Linda and Paul, and a loving grandfather to granddaughters Morgan and Paige. He lived a fulfilling and giving life, and we are all fortunate to have been a part of it. Thank you very much.
It is such an honor to share some thoughts and reflections about Jim, who was such an extraordinary human being, talented attorney, devoted public servant, and world-class judge. Paul, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. My name is Bert Beatty, and I knew Jim for many, many years. Indeed, I can vividly remember the first time I ever heard Jim Thaxter's name. I grew up near Palm Shields on Cincinnati, and the center of our universe was Daly Elementary School. It was and still is a truly great school. As long as I can remember, the neighborhood was very protective of Daly and fought against any commercial development that would increase traffic near the school. Over the years, in the 1950s, 60s, and 70s, there were many battles to preserve the integrity of Daly. The dispute I remember the most occurred when I was in high school at Fresno High in the late 1960s. Someone who wanted to open a business near Daly had the audacity to sue the neighbors, including my father. The urgent question became, who should be hired to represent the good guys? My father had met this impressive young attorney who lived nearby and who had attended the neighborhood meetings. His name was Jim Thaxter. To make a long story short, Jim's legal acumen, as a result of his acumen, the neighbors won their case in the Fresno County Superior Court. Then came an appeal to the 5th District Court of Appeal. In a cutting-edge opinion that is still cited today, the Court of Appeal affirmed the ruling for the neighborhood. Truth, justice, and the American way prevailed thanks to the immense legal talent of Jim Thaxter. He was forever a legal hero in our home and the neighborhood. As a young attorney, I had the privilege of appearing before Jim in the Superior Court. He was an incredible trial judge. He was always so well prepared, such a gentleman, and totally knowledgeable about all areas of the law. So you can imagine the joy and thrill I felt when I was appointed to the Superior Court in 1989 and discovered that Jim and I would share a common area because our chambers were right next to each other. We were neighbors again. For me, becoming a colleague of Jim's was truly a dream come true. It was absolutely wonderful. It was like having the voice of God guiding me down the road of justice. Now, being a Superior Court judge is the toughest job in the judiciary. As a young judge, I would often seek the advice of Jim. He was always so generous with his time and wonderful insights. In the cacophony of the Superior Court, Jim always maintained his calm, reflective demeanor, unflappable, and always respectful to all. Everyone who appeared before Jim as an attorney or litigant, and all of his judicial colleagues, held him in the highest esteem. He was an individual of an incredible depth of character, kindness, thoughtfulness, and immense grace. Unfortunately for me, our time together in the Superior Court was very short. As Governor Wilson elevated wisely Jim to the 5th District Court of Appeal in 1990, I was very happy for him, but selfishly sad. The governor took away my security blanket. I will never forget watching Jim clear out his office. He had a huge garbage can delivered to our common area. I remember asking him why he needed such a large container. His eyes were a bit sheepish when he looked up and replied, "I'm getting rid of all my stuff." He was a fellow pack rat, and I loved that. Very happily for me, we served together again in 1997 when I was appointed to the 5th District Court of Appeal. Serving with Jim on the Court of Appeal was an extraordinary honor. He was the epitome of an ideal appellate justice. Jim was an incredibly talented writer, always so clear and directly on point. His opinions would take the reader on a jury of the case that was always understandable, logical, and concise. He wrote beautiful prose, and when the reader reached the disposition of the case, they had experienced teachable moments on the particular questions of law and legal analysis related to the case. He had the unique ability to explain complex legal issues in an understandable manner. And he had such beautiful handwriting. Jim was one of the most highly respected justices in the history of our court. He possessed such a deep intellect and was so well read. Indeed, he was a true Renaissance man. Even though his brilliance was beyond compare, he was always so down to earth, relatable, and he held compassion for all. He also possessed a very wicked sense of humor. If a justice had a tough case and desired a colleague's input or thoughts, they would always go to Jim. As has been mentioned, he was a terrific listener. Jim would invariably have a valuable thought or suggestion that would help solve the riddle of a challenging legal issue. His clear thinking and vast experience were invaluable to all his colleagues. There is no question that if there was a Hall of Fame of great justices who served on the 5th District Court of Appeal, Jim Thaxter would be in the inaugural class. He was a friend to all and was deeply respected by all. When Jim retired from the 5th in 2001, I was again selfishly disappointed. What were we going to do without him? He was tremendously disciplined and had a plan for his future that included a distinguished career in mediation and arbitration. But I will remember Jim's post-retirement years not for his legal service, but for something even more impactful. Around 2013, my wife Mary Lee became a cuddler of newborns at Valley Children's Hospital. After her first day as a cuddler, she came home and told me she had run into Jim at Valley Children's Hospital. As had been mentioned, Jim had volunteered to help children who were confronting long-term medical issues and would be missing significant amounts of school. The children's teachers would assign them homework, and Jim would sit down with them one-on-one to help them with their homework and teach them about the subject matter at hand. He would play chess, checkers, and do puzzles with the kids. Can you imagine how wonderful and impactful it must have been for those kids to sit next to Jim Thaxter and experience his gentle touch, kind demeanor, and incredible wisdom as he helped each child recover and heal during such a difficult time of their life? That was a reflection of Jim's kind and deep heart, always helping others, showing such devotion to the community and those less fortunate during their time of great need. At the 5th District Court of Appeal, there is a very special place called the roving room. This is where the justices meet before and after oral argument to discuss the cases on calendar. On the walls of the roving room are photographs of all the retired justices who have served on the court. Jim's is the same photo that is in your program and before us today. To this day, before each oral argument, I look at Jim's photograph and remain in awe of his immense intellect, his inherent kindness, and his incomparable moral compass. His warm, dignified, thoughtful spirit mirrored in the photo is an everlasting reflection of his inner goodness. Jim's legacy will remain forever in the hearts and minds of all of us who knew, deeply respected, and loved him so much.
Thank you. I am characteristically unprepared to follow that kind of speech. Thank you all for being here. This is overwhelming. And means so much to all of us in the family. There's extended family here, friends, caregivers, and I'm so grateful for all the hard work that all of you put in. Taking care of my parents, Tracy and Ellie, and who else back there?
That's okay.
And you have done the Lord's work. I can't, I'm not going to try to repeat all of those things. I can attest that everything that they said rang true at home. That's what I meant. He also wasn't perfect. I'll come back around to that. We made a few mistakes along the way, but he would probably laugh along with us. Just a few thoughts that I can add to this. When I was a little kid, my dad and I didn't have that kind of tight bond that kind of wish we had. He didn't live that. I had a sports bond. And I didn't get the sports team. There was only one sports team in the family that we got. And every weekend, whenever the Niners or the Giants or Fresno State team was playing, they would run the TV, and I've never seen such ridiculous enthusiasm. It was embarrassing. I walked in the room and I was invisible, and they were just going at it. And I still look at it. I don't understand it, but whatever. But that's, I mean, my dad was a huge sports fan. As you said, somebody said that he was one of the instigators of the Fresno Junior Soccer League. He actually coached my team. I played for a little while. I don't think I made it to a season. Not sports that. But he continued on and coached for several years, and then became the president of the Fresno Junior Soccer League. Linda also coached, and so yeah, we had that time. He was always very supportive of our interests. When we were young, we roller skated, not like roller derby, nothing weird. It was like figure skating, like on ice, but on roller skates. And so it was competitive. We'd go up and down the valley, and my parents would take us and we'd spend the night, and they're very supportive of all that stuff. And later on, I became interested in drums, and most parents would discourage that. They were super encouraging, and they never said, "Can you do that some other time, like when you're 30?" They encouraged it, and they let my bands practice in the house, and then law enforcement would show up, and they roll with it all, which is just, I'm so grateful for that. I still enjoy doing that. And years later, when I was an adult, my dad confided that he always kind of secretly wanted to be a drummer. Drum buddies, it was funny because he never sat down with the drums. I don't know why, but he introduced me to backpacking when I was in my teens, and to high country, and that was amazing. Not everybody gets to do that, and I miss it. I don't do it anymore, but we used to go up and get to 10,000 feet, and wake up in the mornings to different plans. Let's skip a few spots here, the Lord would say. He was a reader, constant reader, up until these last few months, and he read out of Kindle, 92 years old. He just lived for 93 2 days ago. And he read out of Kindle. I still read an actual book, so I've got our generational reading material backwards. I was always trying to keep up. He would have 10 books lined up on his Kindle to read, and I would go, "What are you going to read next day?" And I'd go buy the book, 4-inch book, and I'd try to keep up with him, and a little past. But he loved the classics. He read Shakespeare. He read Shakespeare. I do.
I did oral studies of Shakespeare.
Okay, all right, we'll talk about that. And he and my mother went to travel, went to the UK, went to Europe. They enjoyed life. He was a huge jazz fan. Got a huge collection of CDs, and always listened to those until recently. On the weekends, I'd go over here, and we play cribbage. We'd go out on the patio on a nice day and play cribbage. He'd up me about half the time. He was not a sore loser, but he enjoyed doing that. He told me once that he always kept the lyrics to somewhere over the rainbow in his pocket. And I found it. He had a copy of the U.S. Constitution, the pocket-sized version. So I think that was the words to over the rainbow. That's the foreshadowing. He was just kind. Everybody loved his smile. The way he took care of him. We always talked about his smile. And the last couple of years, he didn't speak. And smile. Which is I have something I want to read for you. When I was growing up, in addition to the song Casting Cradle, and that song always kind of, it's a song about regret, father and son, life passing too quickly, and not saying the words that are important. And that's that and another one called the Living Years. It's kind of a similar theme more than and I, for some reason, resolved not to let that happen. And so these last few years, anytime a Father's Day or his birthday or Thanksgiving or whatever would come around, I would write out a letter. I'll try to get through this. Nobody wants to see a 64-year-old man cry. Dad, Thanksgiving. This is November 24th, so less than 2 years ago. I thought this would be a fitting opportunity to tell you some of the many things that make me grateful. You taught me countless important lessons over the years, more often by example than by words. I'm thankful for your work ethic. You demonstrated the importance of hard work and dedication to excellence in your career, at home, and in the community. This was not a lesson I learned quickly or gladly, to be honest. It's mostly in retrospect that I understand the value, as it so often is. I remember you coaxing me to do my weekly yard chores by saying, "Isn't it nice to see how good it looks when you're finished?" At the time, it was not nice. I was a slow and reluctant learner. But you were persistent, and I'm grateful for that. As an adult, I find great satisfaction in doing my best at whatever I put my hand to. Thank you. You taught me to appreciate nature. Backpacking was at first more work than joy. But you introduced me to the high country, and I came to love it. I backpacked throughout my 30s and had wonderful memories of waking up at 10,000 feet to the sun, hitting a lake in the ground. Not everyone gets a chance to do that. Thank you. You taught me the value of a good reputation. This was purely by example. Throughout my life and to this day, people who know you speak of your kindness, wisdom, and good judgment. I'm proud to be your son. I'm thankful for the high standards you set. You taught me the value of saying less rather than more. To be reserved and to respect the opinions of others, even when it's painful to do so. To not impose your will on others, but to allow others the freedom to make their own choices and have their own opinions. Thank you. You supported my interests and made time to attend speeding competitions, remember those, and music performances. You never lectured me about my early Catholic tradition, instead giving me room to come to my own conclusions. You supported me financially through my college years, even though I was at an age when I ought to have been independent. Thank you. You also supported my daughters in so many ways. You played board games with them, pretty princess, when they were small. You attended every award ceremony, cross-country race, and track without fail. And you and Mom provided so generously for their education. I'm still blown away by that. Thank you. You taught me, again by example, the value of living within my means and being debt-free. I remember you saying many years ago that you were paying off your mortgage early. And that made me impression. Happy to report that I expect to pay off my mortgage in the next few years. Dad, thank you for all these things.
Someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. Somewhere over the rainbow, the birds fly. Birds fly over the rainbow. Why, oh, why can't I? If happy little birds fly beyond the rainbow, why, oh, why can't I?
We have a little slide presentation.